Please, please. Oh my god, we are so fucking back. It works. It fucking works. Anyway, uh, let me take this down. Uh, take it down. Yeah, thank you very much. Uh, what's up? What's I have stuff to steal, so yeah, that's like priority before actually starting. Also, is it lying? It shouldn't be lying, right? I mean, it's the basic stuff as always, so it should not be lying. Anyways, something else to say? I think not. No, yeah, I mean, it's funny to have so many things to say because nothing is really worth it when you have so many things to say. I guess that's like a I would afterthought from everything else. That not matter what you wanted to say, there is nothing that seems to be valuable at all. But whatever, it really isn't lying. It really isn't lying. We are so back. Also, why do I keep saying philosophy? I'm not a philosopher. I am lying. I am a living lie, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, today, I guess something funny is I try to keep it precise to the point mostly because it feels bad to not do that. Well, it's a possibility, you know. So yeah, let me just finish sending I guess a tweet after I don't know how long, but yeah, sending a tweet that I'm going live and something else. I think not, right? No, I just I can close this. Doing with anything, I can close this. So that's that. I guess. Also, what the fuck? It's it's almost 11 o'clock. Wow, timing. What is it? There is something along the lines of how you can you have everybody has an internal clock and we're aligned to it even if we're not aware of that. So yeah, I guess that's the excuse that I have too. I am here in time, not just in time, but also like properly, literally like on the hour or something like that. Anyway, do I have anything else? Yeah, I can close this for a minute. Now, final step, close the whole browser. I don't use that anyway, so it doesn't matter. Now, okay, I have two more things to do. One of them is to fix my mic because it probably has like weird audio. So let me start with transition to here and let me mute. And yeah, now we are properly live after 5 minutes, 4 minutes and 20 seconds. We are properly live. Anyways, no, wait. We are not properly live. I forgot to put the things that I want to talk about today on the screen for me. Anyway, there we go. Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have all gathered around to just talk. Wow. To do, I mean, I will say to just talk, nothing special. Reality is we don't really talk about shit. Something wonderful has been to see. Literally talk about the stuff of any complexity. What a wonderful world. How much we do not like to talk about things. Anyway, I'm not here to be. I was thinking about it the other day. I think I put myself too much in the position of the accuser of the world. I don't have that right. No, I has that right. At the same time, everybody should be capable of doing that. And doing that actively while knowing that you are making bad things is wrong. So I will say, just to clarify, no, yeah, I don't think I am the accuser. I don't think so far I belong in that position. I'm just, perhaps, I applying what I said before in a proper way. I might as well be a victim of the same thing that I described on other philosophers and whatnot. The world, just through my personal interpretation of it, assuming that everybody has the same nature as me, when it certainly doesn't happen. So yeah, that's so far what I have to say on anything completely unrelated to what I have written down. Something else, I guess. No, just to get it out of the way. Yeah, wow, I'm tired. Wow. 10 out of 10 speech pattern. I don't think so. Just 10 out of 10 complaints. No, whatever, whatever, man. That's it. That's all that I wanted to start with. No, wait, yeah. I had like it another complaint. I was I tried to sit more comfortably here in general, and what I realize is I am not really doing a good work at all. I started to end up more contracted later than ever before. Not exactly that I know why, I guess. It will make sense to explain it from the side of, yeah, I remember hearing something funny about a, I was gonna say a guy, a person, I don't even know who sounded like one Tumblr. It will be a good reference if instead of describing it myself, I showed that. There was a video, a very tiny short about a guy, a person who talked about how they didn't really not do anything when driving a car. They got very exhausted, and that's because they were actually micromanaging their body, doing micro adjustments to their position, and slowly getting into comfortable positions throughout the whole travel process, as well as those tiny accommodations made to allow for proper movements and whatnot when the situation called for them, like any driver does when they are on the road, and that even more in long traffic sessions, it unavoidably happens that people get tired. It just became very natural to completely ignore that because most people just forget about those things once they get accustomed to the whole process of being in a car, I guess. But yeah, I would say probably pretty much the same thing here. Not that it is as similar as that. I wish it will be such a wonderful thing to say. Yeah. The mental energy utilized in stuff of this sort would compare to anything of that sort. One of the things that I just kind of realize is I also always remember this anecdote, or not really an anecdote. It's a study made on professional chess players and how they always seem to be in fit shapes despite not having that much physical activity. And it is because their whole body is trying to feed their minds so that they can perform to the best of their capacities. I think it's it will be an ideal thing to happen that this will compare at all with that. Probably never. I mean, being realistic, one just likes to overestimate things, and I believe that sometimes the stuff is so much better than what the reality is. But yeah, whatever. Just that tiny quick note, I guess. It was funny to see that yeah. I don't even know if I said it. I ended up like incredibly cramped. And also, I was gonna say probably because of this. No, I some other stuff happened that didn't help me at all with those issues. So whatever. I am just making time. I don't really want to go through the list. I feel like today it's one of those difficult days. But if we don't struggle today, when will we struggle? If every single day is just avoiding what we could do, where is the human spirit in all of that? In never actually trying your best and failing. And I remember I haven't think about it these past days quite a lot actually. This funny idea of how in so many cases we like to give up so incredibly early without even having failed. I I I have been considering a lot how it really is not everything so bad. In many cases, it's just a habit of the person, I will say, to simply see it as an impossibility than to even bother with trying and bother at all with the effort that it requires to actually try. See, the need to do stuff, or not the need, the possibility to do something is eclipsed by the amount of mental fatigue that it generates, so that it is better to justify not doing anything than to even trying. That was I have like 1,000 examples always of stuff of that sort, but I think that's one of the best realizations in general how much avoiding things is the norm. And I remember even I have already sort of talked about it before, how we like to avoid responsibilities and whatnot and how it is justified, but it is still baffling to see to which degree one falls into that trap of the mind, I will say. If we did so many things that we thought about doing at all, we will be a lot happier, huh? And we will have a lot more things to do than just sit around and not enjoy existing at all. It's 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 not just a mess. It's a boring life, an empty life to not do anything, a painful life to not be capable of trying anything. And at some point it becomes the norm to avoid everything else. And I mean, in some cases that's the most wonderful thing. I find it that even if you get to fail, you get to fail because you did it and you realize that you truly were incapable of achieving what you wanted. Not because you were living just in your own mind and creating as many scenarios as it was possible for you to see how things will not be possible to be accomplished. The the capacity to never pay attention to what we want is so huge in many cases that the best action is just to avoid the world, to be part of what you wanna do, and to be part of what you seem to be interested in accomplishing is too much work and so much fucking effort. It's no wonder that people cannot really bother themselves with that. And yeah, I keep saying the justification is always because there is no proper meaning behind doing something of that sort. But anyone should be capable of stopping around, looking at themselves and saying, is it? Do I really not want to do what I wanna do, what I wanna accomplish, just because it's something that I don't get? I don't like that particular explanation about how there always seems to be a sort of disconnection between what one actually wants and what they are capable of trying to do. Because it forgets that, yeah, sometimes it's just everything else around that seems so annoying. And when one is capable of getting over that, even if failure happens, it's so much more fulfilling. Living life. Wow, who said it? Profound line. Living life is so much better than just thinking about living. Wow. But yeah, it's that, man. It's just that. That in many cases, I mean, even if things are bad, in many cases, having the possibility of confronting all of that which is horrible is so much of an enjoyment. It's that desire to reduce oneself to a complete incapable mess. to believe that one doesn't have any possibility about anything and accomplishing any sort of thing is so much better than to ever believe that we can get into any place and that we can actually be capable of achieving what we dream of. If it is that we can even believe that we have the right to dream about this stuff. But I don't know, it's just too much of a complex adventurous. I I can excuse myself with yeah. I say it and maybe it doesn't make sense for anyone else. And we leave at that. So I don't have any need to keep explaining. And yeah, everybody else needs to find out their own way to make sense out of being alive. And every kind of issue is not a general issue, it's just an issue that I was capable of solving and sorting out by myself, and nobody else needs to hear how I did it in a comprehensible manner. So, whatever. Whatever. I mean, that's sort of on a more meta commentary side note. That's pretty much the funny thing to try and properly give the whole message a more understandable shape. Takes time also, so it's better to say, oh yeah, there are other things to do, there are other stuff that we should focus on. I personally have written a list that I should try to abide to instead of trying to be so focused on this one particular rant that I am going on about and trying to say anything about. So yeah. What if we just stick to the norm? What if we just stick to what I have already decided? Why should I bother myself with trying to think for a second? You know, why instead of thinking, doing the one thing that almost never happens and showing the possibility of doing something like that and showing even more the benefit that is to be not just thinking in the complete silence of the mind, but with the awareness of the senses over what is being said and the judgment overriding any kind of negative idea, why instead of trying to do that, don't we stick to something else that has already been processed? You know what? This is something that might be risky, so this might hurt some sensibilities, and because of that, we will change routes and we will take a different direction. No one needs to believe that what happens here, that what is outside of the already defined path is at all useful to hear. And no time needs to be spent on trying to properly say anything. What I mean, I will say probably that's the work of everyone to a certain degree. Everyone has to some degree or other just the same issue always. If we were capable of trusting ourselves, we wouldn't be so so condemned in so many ways. But acquiring such a strong sense of self, without also obviously going overboard and just hurting oneself in the process of believing that one might as well be invincible. Yeah, it requires too much time. So yeah, we just might as well evade anything of that sort and say no. We shall stay in the comfortable place that is common place of all of us, the common ground of the soul. Normality of mind instead of braveness. But I think that's that, I guess. That's all I can say about that. So far today, as one of the teachers that I have says like a fucking lot. Yeah, that's as much as I can deepen on that because everything else requires too much of a symbolic. What is it? Of a symbolic apparatus that we do not possess to continue immersing ourselves on. And with that, somehow I say something that fucking nobody understands. That makes no sense. I am providing no clue to what needs to be done to continue furthering ourselves into a proper path. But I am satisfied with that. I get to abandon what I was saying and move on to something different that might be related at all, might not. Who knows? Anyways, that's like also too much fucking meta commentary. So yeah, uh, I like my soup with self awareness. Indeed, I like my soup to be served from the guts of a fucking vegetable who is self aware that it is being cooked. So yeah, whatever. what a what a crazy image. Anyway, moving on. Let's start with something, shall we? First, first title, first nose, I guess. Yeah, yeah. This one, I haven't think about it for a long. This one, I can sort of elaborate to not make it sound so bad because the title is the lack of harshness and taking all as one's blame. That's the proper title. That's where it's also sort of stops because In some cases, the introduction of a title is must be accompanied by a proper explanation of it in order to allow the reader to get what the presentation tries to be about without just delving on the topic itself beforehand, because if one were to not pay attention to how it is necessary to elaborate, misinterpretations might happen and the whole idea might not get properly understood from the quote unquote correct, as in desired, viewpoint that will allow the reader to get a sort of similar perspective and final understanding about the same concept as the author. So, now, trying to be less pedantic, this one, I haven't thinking about it. I hate to some degree how much we like to just blame everything else. It's always, it has always been a struggle, I guess. At this point, I would even say I have already talked about this. Probably, I mean, I. It's very much cyclical what I mention here and what I don't. I rarely, I guess, if it's based on what I remember, I don't think I am that much outside of a loop of any way. Now, I guess, psychoanalytical way, one being enclosed in a closed loop itself will not be that rare for anyone. So yeah, this pretty much probably has already been said with different words. Anyways, continuing. I have been thinking about this issue, this thing of how I like always to see people talk about things and get angry about this stuff, at how much in general the different sorts of negative emotions that we to experience do not come from a place of proper, I will say proper, I mean, yeah, I already said proper, in a sort of context of correctness, of ethical correctness. There is a way in which you can be angry at someone else, and it might be justified if you are seeing that what they are doing is truly bad, which most people sadly don't have. That quote of true evilness is very rare in the world. Don't, and another quote on the same line of don't attribute evilness or malice to what might be justified or explained by stupidity. That sort of thing of, yeah, it makes no sense to get angry at anything else that has to deal with what we wanted or what makes us feel any kind of negative emotion to other people just because they are bad. But that's not the main point. Going back to the main point, in many cases it happens that we get to feel this sort of improper negative emotions arise from us when we have to deal with other people, when we have to deal with things that we didn't get to experience, let's say frustrated desires in life, because things didn't go our way. And in many cases, I have realized something funny happens, and that is, in reality, one starts to blame everything else but oneself. There is almost never a proper level of self awareness about how much one is not properly trying what would have allowed them to succeed. There is never a proper stage of self analysis in which the person gets to observe what might have they tried to do in order to accomplish and to gain what they wanted. It's just every single time, yeah, everyone else was wrong, and it was their issue, and it was their problem, and I didn't get to be in time in a certain place. because everyone else didn't cooperate with me. I didn't get to be with another person as much as I wanted to because they failed in how they should have responded to me, and I didn't get to obtain any of those important jobs at this new place because they just completely ignored me, and I am being ostracized by the whole rest of the world. And I sort of, going back to what I mentioned earlier, in this tendency to negate things, to act in any kind of way, not just bad ways, in any kind of way, and to continue acting in that same way. The same thing happens here. At some point, everything else is the issue, but oneself, and it's just necessary to realize. I will say, yeah, maybe I am more of a problem to myself than what I was capable of realizing. The person seems to be completely willing of, yeah, completely willing to shut themselves. Doing that is not just complicated, but bad, I would say. It always is the desired goal to ignore, believing that we are problems to our own, in our own life. And also, I mean, that's a very good counter argument is no, because you hear, you think about your mistakes, you realize that you are your own problem. And unavoidably, because you see yourself as a problem, you want to get rid of yourself. So out of nowhere, you're just having suicidal thoughts. No, man. Are we assuming that we are every single human being stupid? How is it that you can't realize, yeah, I might be capable of doing things better, and I am not interested in doing that. I am not interested in properly paying attention to what I am. How much of a responsibility ends up being in my hands about this stuff. I don't try to do that. I just live a life in which everything else is bad and in which everyone else is into wrong. I don't have to experience myself as the one who suffers anything. I have a nice life and I have a nice, enjoyable, meaningless loop of things that I do. And if I complain about everyone else, but not me. I am not in the wrong here. This this desire to never talk about being wrong, how much it has. It's a sort of a stupid postulate on the other hand to say, yeah, how much we don't like accountability. Not really. People love that there is no better sign of aptitude in any kind of place than accountability. That's how much we like accountability, but it goes more along the lines of no, maybe proper accountability is just complicated to be had. Who would wish to be so accountable of themselves, so capable of realizing what they need to do, that they don't get the pleasure of blaming anything else? But yeah, that's just going back to that. I now that I start talking, I remember how much I already spent a lot of time mentioning this before, and it's always something funny to talk about because it's always an ignored thing. I mean, it's impossible to solve it in a way. It just needs proper action to be taken from the place of the individual. The issue itself is, on the other hand, that very same thing. The individual willing to recognize that they might not be so beneficial to their own lives. The many ways in which we avoid at all recognizing that something is wrong with us is such a baffling thing that it's always better to just look outside for everything else. There is no need to be inside of oneself, to live with oneself, to obtain a realization about what needs to be done. And unavoidably, the best sort of conclusion about that is even more how, because nothing can be actually changed, life is already doomed to fail. That's sort of the unavoidable, completely unmentioned conclusion that most people find themselves at or find themselves to be in. Yeah, I can't change life. I can't change the course of existence. I can't really change how things go because nothing is in my hands. I don't get to decide at which time I will arrive at work. I don't get to decide how much I will be capable of doing today. I don't get to decide which sort of actions I will take. I don't decide anything. So everything else is already decided by me. So my life means nothing because it's not my life. It's a life that everyone else gets to decide on except myself. And after that, that's so much of a better conclusion somehow then yeah I might be capable of taking some accountability. I don't need accountability. I need to keep seeing everything as that way and unavoidably will reach the same conclusion that anybody who thinks about it like that does. You know what? I don't matter in my own fucking life. Why am I here? What the fuck is the point of being alive if I don't get to have a life myself? And unavoidably, things of the bad sort ensue after that. Let's say it's just like that, to keep it sort of safe. Things of the horrible fucking sort ensue. But yeah, no need to take accountability. And I mean, I was a certain benefit also after having had this thought around for at least a year, 2 years, probably 3 or 4 already in my mind. It is to also get to play the other side, to play a quote unquote devil's advocate with all of that. So let me read it. The illusion of making everything fall onto oneself. That's the second title. Because the reality is, on the other hand, also it's so much of a stupid thing in many cases to do that. It's such a pointless action to do that. There are so many things that are indeed outside of our control. It would be wonderful if every single event that happened to us was traceable back to ourselves. But I mean, main example. I have scheduled my whole life to get always at time at work and enjoy some free time even before being in my working hours so that I can get to enjoy some coffee outside and see the park, the people go and whatnot. And one day I go up, get to ride my bus and we fucking crash. Who is to blame? No one else but me. Is that reasonable? Certainly not. And yeah, the funny thing is, it's an unhealthy level of accountability. At that point, it stops being accountability and it becomes a sort of obsession with believing that the whole world is the way it is because of me and everything happens due to how I act in this world. But the theory is that the reality is many people think about it that way. There are 1,000 people who blame themselves for everything. And at that point, it unavoidably is an issue to believe that every single bad thing that happens is because of us. So, something wonderful that every single person who tries to think about issues gets hit with at some point of their thinking activity is, am I really the only thing that is stopping this issue from being solved? Because I'm taking no action whatsoever, we are incapable of solving this fundamental issue of the world. Is that it? Is literally my incapacity to take any kind of action what is holding us back from accomplishing anything? Certainly not. Certainly it is unhealthy to believe that some fundamental wrong things out this world lie in our shoulders alone. But people still falls for that. People still dies for that. Not just, oh wow, yeah. People somehow believe some those things. And that's it. No, people fucking loses their lives for that. People sacrifices themselves because they truly believe that everything is as important as they are capable of believing that it is when it comes to themselves and nothing else. Sadly, it's just a comforting idea to believe that one is such a necessary piece in the whole puzzle of life. But if we don't have that, what do we end up with? That's the real conclusion is, what do we end up with if we don't have the right to think about ourselves or to think about the rest of the world? I would, no, I guess like you said, it would be a proper, a proper connection between the two. Understanding the place the world plays in us and the place we play in the world. If both things don't happen, we don't get to have a good life. Unavoidably, we don't get to have a good life. But both things need to go in both directions, I guess. And I mean, that's also the funny thing. We, in a certain way, I'm not saying anything new. I'm not saying anything also different or I am saying it just with different words. This is, you can see it pretty much as the self and the other. So from I think it was Q and all of that people who talked about it. I remember having heard about them a lot last year. I still have to properly go through the texts and what's not. And that the necessity to believe that we are living in opposition to something, or that we need to just live in cohesion to something else. Not really. I mean, that's being incredibly reactionist, sadly. If you cannot understand the world just outside of I exist, then everything else does, or everything else exists, then I do because of that, or in any kind of argumentation of I exist and everything else also exists, it's sort of pointless. I will say that binary way of thinking is sort of pointless to some degree. Trying to see it as that won't probably result in the best of conclusions, because the possibility, even more with something different, the possibility to move oneself, or the whole conceptualization from one end to the other very rapidly is incredibly big. The incapacity of believing that what is being thought about might as well be transformed the very next day into the complete opposite. It is unheard of, not because it deserves to be unheard of, but because we lack the capacity to properly realize that, yeah, I might be enclosing myself in a way in which I am defining the world that might not allow me to properly enjoy it if things were to turn around, let's say. So yeah, whatever. That's a sort of more. I already said before, too much meta-analysis of things, and eh, I don't know. I like it. I assume most people don't, because if not, it would be so much more of a common thing. Let's say it that way. I assume meta-analysis is not such a popular topic because people don't get to like it. Or I mean, I would rather say people don't get to understand why it is so necessary. But whatever. I'm not here to justify that. We are here for different stuff. We still have how many? Six? No way. Okay, five. I was like, six topics? How? How do we have six topics? No, we only have five. One less. One. A whole one less. Incredible. But yeah. Let me let me continue. Also, wait. I didn't check at all if we didn't lag. I should do that actually. Oh yeah, we are running. We are perfectly running. Ah, I wonder why yesterday internet just didn't want to work. Anyways, completely different thing. New thing, new concept, new topic. Tabula rasa, something completely different. Almost fully unrelated. I haven't. I don't even know if I spent some time thinking about it. I think this one is one of those few ideas that I find inside of my mind that I say, yeah, I want to talk about it. Because I mostly just find it interesting that I was capable of finding about it in any way, let's say. But it's title. Let me read the title. This one is for the abandoned ideas of the active mind. There is a certain theory. I think yeah, it's sadly I must admit most of the thing that I talk about is aligned with psychoanalytic thoughts in terms of psychology because that's most of what we talk about, I guess. We don't get to have another affiliation in terms of ideology, so I'm not going to be postulating anything new in that sense. At, at the best, I will just be restructuring already existing ideas into new forms of speech. Whatever. The abandoned ideas of the active mind refers to a very funny concept. There is something that happens in anybody's head, consciousness, let's say, and that is there are things that one likes to think about, there are things that one believes that they like to think about, that they abandon, despite them believing that they like to think about it. The issue is both what we like and what we believe that we like to think about are indistinguishable at a first glance. I will say the real, yeah, you can try to run 1,000 tests to see to analyze yourself and judge if what you are saying that you like, that you care about, is truly what you want and what you wish and what you are looking towards to out of that development. A more simplistic view is just we are very good at lying. We are very, very good at lying to ourselves. I mean, the funny thing of knowing yourself is also knowing completely yourself and knowing completely how you can trick yourself into believing stuff in some cases. it might as well be the reality. In some cases, we might just believe that we care about things, believe that we care about what we say, what we do, and what not, and it will be completely indistinguishable, unindistinguishable from what we actually like and what we actually care about, just because we are capable of lying to ourselves to that degree. And anyways, theory postulates there are those two things: what we like and what we act like we like. The issue is the moment in which we find any kind of detriment coming from those things, either that we actively like or we act like we like, any of those things that might have a negative side out of nowhere finally reveals itself to us. What we do like will be something that we will keep trying and trying again and trying to do, to finally fulfill, to be capable of continuing doing. While what we do, the things that we do not like, that we said only we liked, when we find some minimal degree of that beautiful counter pulling, I was going to say counter pulling. I am blanking. I am just going to blame my tiredness, but yeah, I am blanking out on that term. That is repulsion, I guess. Repulsion coming from what we like, from what we say that we like, but we actually didn't. When we feel that, we abandon that and we leave it. All of these developments just to say, yeah, there are some ideas. The abandoned, most, if not probably all, the abandoned ideas of the active mind are because, to some degree, what we are thinking about is not truly that good for us. For the active judgment, I will say, because also it would be funny to say, or to just boil it down to, we abandon everything that is bad. No, man, I mean, it will be the best. It will be the most magical thing to happen to anybody if they were capable of abandoning every single bad idea that they had. No, man, it doesn't happen. You just avoid thinking about things that you personally do not like. That's how it functions. That's what's the issue here. All the things that any active mind abandons is because they are incapable of framing as something that they should be capable of liking. Or unavoidably, that's still on the same. It is being a reductionist, but if you don't understand something else, or you sort of don't like it by default, that's the reductionist explanation for the things that we do not go back, that we do not understand, because you don't really like it, you don't understand. You don't understand it, therefore you don't like it, therefore you do not feel like trying to learn about it. In reality, you might find yourself called to those unknown things in some cases. The curiosity is kind of, in that sense, ignored by this theory, but we don't talk about that. We're only here to talk about that side of how any active mind likes to abandon stuff, and it does not do so because it's just out of nowhere wanted to try what will happen. Sadly, sadly, they do that because, yeah, I'm just willing to fucking let go of my wish. I'm just willing to completely forgo of this thing, since it does not seem to be at all that interesting for my actual interests. useful for my actual interest or beneficial for my actual structure of being. Let's say it in that way. Now, this is so far just a development of an already settled thing. Is there something to add to that? Yeah, I will say, the unavoidable reality in that sense is, in many cases, the person gets to possess awareness about what they uh, don't like or what they say that they do not like, and they try to avoid by observing which things they have already removed from their lives. So, the moment in which we get to realize what we have already started to avoid because we are at the very least not willing to say that we like it, if we are unwilling to just outright admit that we dislike this thing, if we're not capable of saying that we do not like it, we will remove it, and when it happens, the possibility of realizing maybe I can do some work and maybe I can try to let it be on my life, include it on my existence, opens up. Basic definition. It just requires awareness as to why out of nowhere some resection happens. But resection happens. But we, if it was as easy as just explaining how to do it, and out of nowhere, any single time that we resected stuff, we were capable of realizing, oh wow, I am resecting something. Am I doing it because it truly does not benefit me, or am I doing it just because I do not like it personally? Life will be wonderful. Everybody will have an optimal life. So yeah, that's the answer. But putting it in action is a completely different thing in this case. And yeah, that's it. Guys. Now for my next action, I will use a search point to fucking hide it because I'm dying. A search action point. And I will also use my reaction to drink water. Anyway, what's up? We have only two more things to talk about today. Then I will be liberated from here. Yeah, I actually did talk about six things, including the meta analysis and whatnot that I did before actually checking the list. So, yeah, a very, very wonderful show. Um, I might just, as always. Yeah, it hasn't even been. It hasn't even been an hour, I think, and I'm almost done. Why? Explanation. Because I'm tired. That's the wonderful thing about this. That I am so tired that at least I get to be here and I get to cover everything. Because I rushed the fuck out of it. um, yeah, before starting the next thing, to a certain degree, going back to this self awareness concept, lacking the self awareness to realize how, in those cases of rushing stuff, makes it so much more un- incapable of being understood. Let's say it that way. unintelligible, yeah, is is such a funny thing. Wanting to say stuff, wanting to say any kind of meaningful thing, then forgetting that because you want to say as much as you can of that thing, you're not really being capable of conveying the meaning that you wished to in the beginning. Is such a fucking failure. Not in the sense of wow, yeah, what a failure, but rather of the desire does not get fulfilled just because the person forgets that they need to have patience with this stuff. Developing some, not some, most concepts requires time and requires patience and requires then proper care. But it's better to just care about saying as much as it's possible than to actually pay attention to what is being said, the way it is in which it is being said, and anything like that. Ah, so it's no wonder that the stuff works in that way. Also, good evening, morning, night. Welcome, Andy. Ah, good day. No, yes, good life, Andy. Good life. Ah, but yeah, that's my conclusion so far. I guess. I don't know. I mean, on the other hand, even so, I do have the excuse of yeah, sleepiness and whatnot. So I get to say yeah, I might just want to round up everything before I just fall asleep here. I mean, it hasn't happened so far. At least when I had been here in solitude, it never has happened. So kind of pointless to out of nowhere say, yeah, I am just being aware. Oh yeah, that's yeah. That's the best explanation, man. Of oh yeah. I am trying to care, and I am trying to do my best to avoid failing and avoid saying something bad and avoid struggling and falling asleep here. I am tired, so I will decide to just rush ahead and fucking fail to deliver anything because I am caring, guys. Watch me care? No, man. I don't care. I don't really care. I can justify myself in that way, and I can justify not taking the time that I should be taking to say the things that I seem to care about. It's always better to do that. That's what I'm talking about. Proper radical accountability. That sort of accountability is what's needed. In how many ways one becomes complacent with bad behavior and nothing else. It's just a sort of mask for laziness to do that. A sort of mask for actually non-engagement to believe that everything that one does is justified in those ways. Not everything is justified, or if the justification does exist, it is not so apparent. It's not the first thing that comes to mind in many cases. Anyway, continuing, because uh, if not, that beard that chirps inside of one's head says, "Oh wow, yeah, move on." So, moving on. Funny, I mean, that's that's sort of the ah, what a wonderful work. What a clever guy. Who wrote that? Why did he place that topic next to what came before? What a wonderful work. Next topic is why words, more specifically sentences, or more, no, and even more properly useful expressions, not just words, are so inaccessible. That's the title. Explanation, uh, or exam question. Why? Why words and even more properly useful expressions are so inaccessible? Question mark. Please elaborate. Explanation with my own words. That funny thing that happens of using words. I'm pretty sure that the best explanation is just. I think I am pretty sure it comes from nothing else besides the reality that sadly we could say things. We could always say the best words for any situation. The reality is what I mentioned before. It takes time, and sometimes we forget that we need to have patience. I have a. I have seen so many screw ups of people rushing ahead to give answers to others just because we seem to be so incapable of understanding that, yeah, we need to process stuff. We need to be capable of something that is not so unreliable. The filter that we all possess, the inner filter that allows for the filtering of words, for the filtering of ideas, is also in action when it comes to what we want to reply to someone else. How can we reply with the best of the responses? In some occasions, it doesn't mean that the first thing that comes to mind is just the best thing. It's a sort of complicated matter when you are talking about being honest. Certainly, being honest involves saying, in some cases, the first thing that comes to mind, but also it involves unavoidably paying attention to how the fuck you say it. It's not. Holy shit! I almost gave a very wrong example. It's not the same thing to say. Hmm, kind of complicated to think about an example. Uh, because I'm so fucking sleepy. But you know what? The point is things take time. Give me a fucking second to think out a fucking good example. Yeah, I mean, in any not discussion, in any conversation, it's not the same to just say, but okay. Let me explain it properly. There is something funny that happens inside of the mind with certain words, and some of those words are but and itself. How we interpret anything that comes after a but. That's a beautiful expression. That is, but this thing, but what you said, but what happened, is interpreted as sort of negation, and it gets
interpreted as something bad, even if what you are saying is something good. The moment in which you introduce the bad, it gets filtered as something that should be attacked, because I think it has to do with the grammatical way in which we like to talk about words, or we like to picture words inside of our mind. We assembled since a long time ago, but as not really a distinction of things in itself and nothing else. It's a negative distinction in which but is a sort of negative remark about stuff. In the most grammatical level, or the most basic grammatical way in which we learn about but as an expression, we use it negatively. So that's that. On the other hand, when we use and, it always is an addition, a proper win, a proper good word that adds more structure and allows for more connectivity with everything else. And it happens, funnily enough, that yeah, we the moment in which we try to reply to someone else, that was what I was trying to with the example. When we have a conversation, even if we try to agree with someone, because we forget basic rules of this sort, implying that we know them, we end up rushing our words and adding stuff that shouldn't be there, adding words that should not be utilized. So we clutter the interpretation, we twist the possible final interpretation, we act against our true desire just because we get careless with how we are acting. And it should be no wonder to some degree that it happens. Certainly, in this current era, the funny thing of hyper speed everywhere sort of would be a very good thing to point out when it comes to, oh wow, and because of the hyper speed of how life is, now we have a hyper speed in how we are willing to talk about things, and we are willing to engage in conversations. No, man, it doesn't mean that we cannot take time to properly think what we are going to talk and what we are going to say. It's just an excuse, nothing else. Time is still the same thing as always. Our attentions might have gotten worse, but it doesn't mean that time itself has changed in any way. For us, at least. As a species, we haven't really evolved so far. The only changes that have happened are technological things, not biological. I guess, yeah, we are unavoidably slowly approaching biotechnological augmentations now more than ever, but we are still not there to say, oh wow, yeah, we are altering the perceptions that we have of time, since we are introducing chips to our bodies that are making us feel how 1 second is 1,000 hours. No, man, that isn't happening right now. At the rest, I can give you. We are frying our brains with too much short form content in that way, but sadly, we are not really changing it in the other direction, I guess. But yeah, that's basically what I wanted to bring up with that topic. How the words are not inaccessible because of how complex they are, implying that most people or the average person possesses a good enough lexicon to refer themselves to when they want to say stuff. It just happens that the sentences that they wish to construct lack the proper message, or the proper shape of the message for the receiver to to be capable of finding themselves with something that is fully acceptable. Because in most cases, the sensibilities of the and yeah, that's sort of the more proper explanation. The sensibilities of the reader are not taken into account when the writer creates anything. It is just the sensibilities of the writer that are taken into account, and the necessities of the writer to be as fast as possible with the transmission of the idea, not the whole interconnectivity that always exists between reader and writer. It's just another importance and another focus on the writer as the creator of the message and the unavoidably sender emissor of the message. Not any thought is given about the receiver and the listener also. So yeah, that's sort of the whole tragedy with all of this. Words are not inaccessible or have become even less more inaccessible. It's just that we have stopped caring in that sense. We have lost the sight of what is a proper way to try and talk about all of those issues, I guess. But yeah, that's that, I guess. That's the topic. Now, yeah, funny thing. We are already on the final topic. I did. I did rush ahead. And here we are standing around the last thing to say today. What the fuck? Oh, I was going to be incredibly amazed. I misread it. Thankfully, I misread it, and it wasn't what it said there. It was the I read the age of Teodoro and the presentation of ideas. I was like, no way, I truly interconnected everything in that way. But no, it isn't that. It is still related to Teodoro. It is the ego of Teodoro and the presentation of ideas. So yeah, everything is. In this case, it's unavoidably all connected because probably excuse or meta-analysis. Funnily enough, when your brain is tired enough, you don't really are capable of pulling from as many different sources as you believe as that you can. You just pull for very similar ones, and at the best, in this case, the language plays an important role because you believe that what you are saying is not at all that related. But in reality, all of this is pretty much like 1 or 2 degrees of separation from everything else. Not that much. I have had other times in which I had a lot more time itself to think about stuff and be capable of argumenting things completely unrelated. But in this time, in this occasion, it isn't a reality. So, continuing or properly starting with a topic, that's what matters. Properly talking about this. Title is repeating. Repeats? Yeah, repeating. The ego of Theodore and the presentation of ideas is very much what I mentioned before, or what I briefly mentioned. The issue. Ah, no. Okay. I remember what I was thinking about with this one. Okay. Sleepiness also makes you forget. Sorry for that. It wasn't as related. I had one wonderful issue. I had been having one wonderful issue. I remember briefly writing about it on the reflection channel in the Discord, and that was something happens inside of me. I started to realize something. I always said that I wanted to write something, and I have found out that in reality There are many things I could have already written anything about. I might just be hiding behind the curtain of, oh, yeah, I want to be original with what I say. It's so much of a stupid excuse to say that in many cases. The need to be original is, in many ways, just an excuse to not take action in any other way. And I was spending time and time and time and time trying to look at a proper way to do that. And unavoidably, in some hand, to some degree, anyone wants to be original because doing the whole work that requires to read anyone else is complicated. It's time consuming. It's even more hard to do if you don't really have that much symbolic exploration beforehand. So you find yourself dealing with ideas that you can barely fucking picture in your mind. And all of that is not as easy to think about because you have no proper clue about what you are trying to see or what you are trying to talk about. So we return to this stuff. These these things of, oh wow, yeah, I I want to write something original. Isn't that truly related to what has to deal with the incapacity to just stick with what has been said and expanding on that, but rather the unwillingness to do that, the willingness to do the whole exploration. I mean, sort of unknown knowledge is that in many cases what could be written about has probably already been said, and you will need to do as much reading as you have done before just to realize, to find out if what you are trying to postulate an idea on hasn't already been postulated. At, unavoidably, at this point, I guess I should have already clarified all of this coming from the social sciences. There are other different sciences in which that surely shouldn't happen, no? Implying that hard sciences are as good of an structure as they showcase the rest of the world. Uh, in the social sciences, suddenly, the possibilities to comment on anything are far lower than what any starter observer believes, because many of the issues have been mentioned not with enough intensity probably to gain that much importance in the whole public discourse and whatnot, but they have already been addressed and whatnot. There are many things that are left untouched, so to speak, in the place of what is, yeah, in the place of the social spaces and whatnot, because unavoidably there are some things that should have been given enough, not just importance, but enough for us to be noted by everyone, I guess. For example, something that seems to be important about, maybe not a good example, it's about politics. I don't give a single fuck. Uh, Marx and about how social consciousness will allow the working class to overthrow the governments and whatnot, or to start with the overthrowal of the governments. Yeah, it kind of became a popular discourse, but at the same time, it didn't really become what it was intended to be. It just gained enough intensity, and now, because it stopped being charged, it has just become another tool for the appeasing of the masses and appeasing of the working class, for example, because it hasn't been it hasn't remained in that position of a revolutionary force that can alter the lives of the workers and allow them to have as many benefits as they truly deserve, but rather it has been now transfigured into this idea of just a place in which people get to join in the sadness of working, to allow themselves a second to rest while the work itself keeps exploiting them, and the unions are not unions anymore in a proper sense like before, but rather they are just unions in disgrace, which let them share their grief and not much more. Stuff of that sort happens with most ideas, and all of that is sadly the unwillingness of the author to explore anything. And I find it to be, in most cases, the reality. I wish it was as simple as saying, "Oh yeah, no, there is really nothing to write out." There are many things to write out. The issue is being capable of doing the work to find out which things are worth mentioning at all, which things have not been mentioned if you want to have something original, and also different note, but still talking about the ego, and also the presentation of them of those ideas is there is something important about. I will say on the level of self-importance that everyone believes to have. I have been struggling with this one. I wouldn't say that this one is so much of a confirmed idea, but from what I have been observing, I'm pretty sure there is a degree of uh, redeeming hopefulness out what is going to be mentioned, that if it is bad enough, if what is being brought up is such a horrible thing, is if what is being created or being said seems to not have that much of a good reception, it doesn't need to lie on the hands of anyone else but the author itself. If it is something completely original, the reality of being the only one who has to bear with the mistake and with the error that has been obtained after the creation of the thing, of the idea itself, after the what is it? After the publication of the idea, whatever, is a lot more bearable when you don't have to think about anyone else. When you don't have to take into account that you not only failed to read someone else, you failed to understand what the message was, you failed to know that it was already mentioned, you failed in many different ways. When you forego all of that and you just make something new, you gain that possibility. Once again, I wouldn't say that happens in most cases. I would think most ideas, as I already said, in the social sciences field, really fall onto this category. I think it would be a wonderful thing if we all got to truly just say fully original stuff for that sake, but in most cases, I still think it just aims to satisfy the ego of the author. I probably, one in 1,000 cases, is more of the latter sort, in which, yeah, the author is not willing to say anything that might be related to someone else, because if it were to fail, other people will also have to deal with the responsibility of that failure. Um, Sadly, no, not really. Most thoughts don't come from that place of, oh wow, yeah, I truly care about everyone else to that point. That's, I guess, all of that was just a long elaboration to say, yeah, and that's how any writer finds excuses to not publish stuff. because proper work takes time. So, and a lot of struggle, friction, and whatnot. So, it's better to just say, you know what, screw it and not do it, than to try at all and fail. Anyway, that's it, I guess. I don't have anything else to say. I have already repeated it too much times. I'm tired. So, I'm screwing off today. Uh, Time for me to leap. I am fulfilled. I said everything that I wanted. Uh, that I was capable of writing down to the list. I had to think about other stuff, but that will remain for tomorrow. And yeah, this is a fucking promise, unless something weird happens. In which case, I will be, I don't know, announcing it on the Discord, I guess. But yeah, here tomorrow at the same time, same hour, same people. Ah, anyway, uh, thanks, thanks for everything. It has been a very good day. So yeah, thanks for the patience. Ah, no, yeah, I. Oh, what a long day. Tomorrow won't be as long as it was today. I mean, yeah. Thinking about it, there are many other things that could have been added to what I said. Sometimes it's better to not use so personal examples. I would say that's personally that's what makes me feel like in so many cases philosophy, even more the modern philosophy, is based mostly around the view world of the author because they use too many personal examples. They don't use commonly observable issues, they use common examples that only I experience. But anyway, that's a different rant for another day. Now for real. Good night. Thanks for watching. Also, thanks for being here. Sorry for not saying anything directly worse. Good night.